and that in fact this is our land. So beginning with that premise, whether you're more or not more, I'm going to start with what law really is. Most of us think that we go into a courtroom and understand the difference between a court and a courtroom, that the people who purport to use law really use words of art to make you believe, in fact, that law is on the table when you walk into a courthouse or a courtroom, when in fact that's not true. And I would like to share with you tonight, regardless of your religious persuasion, what law really is. Law, all law, is A-L-L space L-A-W, all law, all law. So for anyone who's of a Christian persuasion, don't be misled, and when you hear the term all law is God, all right? That is also what we would say in lawful terms a misnomer. All law is not God. God has no capacity and no standing to all law, because God means governmental ordinance departments. There is no comparison. Now, who can use law? Law can only be used by people who are in their sovereign capacity. And as I will share with you tonight, the majority of the people in the world, and I'm not going to get into all of the details about that, but the majority of the people in the world, 99% of them live in slavery today. So in 1863, via the Emancipation Proclamation, and I challenge you to go look in a law dictionary and look up the definition of emancipation and proclamation, and you will see that a proclamation is not a law. A proclamation is a public announcement by elected officials. It is not a law. So the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 did not set any slaves free. What it did was standardized slavery, the United States being the model for the standardization of slavery, that all of the other nations around the world, as they reduced their people from their sovereign capacity and forced them to join nation states, then they were able to issue statute, codes, ordinances, resolutions on them. And a statute, as in a state statute of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is not a law. It is corporate policy of the corporation that calls itself the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated. All right? Now, a code is not a law. The United States codes, the code of the laws of the United States of America that are used in federal court and the Supreme Court, are not law. They are what they say they are. They are codes, ordinances, and resolutions of a municipality of the city of Philadelphia, which is a private nonprofit corporation that calls itself the City of Philadelphia. An ordinance and a resolution, as in parking ordinances, they are not law. They are what they say they are. They are ordinances and they are resolutions. All right? And the reason they are not law is because the only people who can issue law are people who are acting in their sovereign capacity. And the people who sit in these seats as elected officials are not, in fact, in their sovereign capacity. They are in a corporate ward status, meaning that they are wards of the state. They are members of the corporation, which is a nonprofit, that calls itself the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as long as they have a birth certificate on record with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, with that birth certificate being a contract, a birth certificate is a contract, and as long as you have a contract with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated, you belong to them, and that's what slavery really is. All right? So who can use law? If you are a member of a corporate ward state, if you are a member of a corporate ward nation that calls itself the United States of America, you are a citizen. Look in the law dictionary and look up the definition of citizen. A citizen is not a sovereign. A resident is not a sovereign. Therefore, if you use an address, which is a fictitious number associated with a designation issued by a corporate ward, right? then you become under the jurisdiction of those people who are also corporate wards, but who are also slaveholders. All right? So if you are operating in that capacity, law does not apply to you. If you are a resident of the city of Philadelphia, which is a private nonprofit corporation, and you say you are a resident of the city of Philadelphia, then the ordinances and the resolutions of that private nonprofit corporation apply to you. If you are a citizen of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated, which is a private nonprofit corporation, then the statutes of that nonprofit corporation apply to you. If you are a citizen of the United States of America, which is a private nonprofit corporation, then the code of the laws, right, apply to you. But if you are a sovereign of the Moorish Empire, those ordinances, those resolutions, those codes, those statutes do not apply to you because you are not a member of the corporate ward state. It's as simple as that. And they understand the difference. This is why on their documents, they use words of art. They use the word label. They use the word person. They use the word address. All of these things that place you in their jurisdiction, and you unknowingly fill out forms every day. And every time you fill out a form, you enter into a contract. I don't care what kind of form it is. It's a contract. A driver's license application is a contract. A Social Security application is a contract. When you call up the telephone company and you make a verbal contract over the telephone, this is why they can bill you. When you sign a deed, it is a contract. When you fill out a voter registration form, it is a contract. Does everybody understand that? Don't ever think anything that you put your signature on becomes a contract. All right? Now, the fact that you are not in your sovereign status means that you make a contract as a minor. They don't care. They know you are a minor because, and to be other than a minor, you have to be in your proper person at law. And how we write that is this. Can y'all see that? Impropria persona. Impropria persona. When you are in your corporate ward status, you look like this to the court. Pro se. Pro se meaning they get you in the court and they bring someone in called a prosecutor, a prosecutor, because you're in a corporate board status. Now, if you're in propria persona, say in their criminal allegations, the prosecutor cannot come into the courtroom and say anything to you because you're not in pro se status. Makes sense, right? The issues of law are threefold. The issues of law are status, jurisdiction, and adjudication. The first thing that happens when you walk into a courtroom in your corporate ward status is that they already make the assumption that you are a ward of the state and that you don't know any better. So they immediately start adjudicating you. As the first thing that happens when we walk into a courtroom is that we place our status on the record. On the record. We come in with our flag. We come in with our treaty. We come in with the Constitution we signed with them, and understanding that the Constitution is a contract. It's a contract between who? It's a contract between the United States Republic and the United States of America. But there are certain clauses in that contract that apply to Moors, which takes us back to the Treaty of 1787. But that contract between the United States and the United States of America does not apply to us other than that part that discusses the treaty. So it's not relevant for us to go into any courtroom and argue about their ordinances, their codes, their statutes. The only thing we're in there to talk about is, have we violated the treaty? Have we violated that part, which is Article 6 of the Constitution, that applies to us? That's the only question in the courtroom. Because the status of the individuals looks like this. You and the judge. There's nobody else that you need to discuss anything with in the courtroom besides the judge. The prosecutor is invisible to you. Now, what do you have to say to that judge? My honor, not your honor. What is your status? What is your name? What is your nationality? All right? And do not let them get away with saying, I am a U.S. citizen. You cannot be a citizen and sit a bench. You cannot be a member of the Bar Association, which is a private, nonprofit corporation that issues registration numbers to its members who do not have a license to practice law in any state. Because in order to have a license to practice law, you must have your proper person. And in order to be in propria persona in this country, whether that be North America, Central America, or South America, you must be a Moor. If they want to be sovereign, they've got to go home. They cannot be sovereign here. The next issue of law is jurisdiction. Now, let me stick with status. What is the status of the prosecutor? What is the status of the district attorney? What is the status of Lynn Abraham? Does anybody in this room know her nationality? I don't. That's an important question to ask her if she serves me with any papers. Who are you? Where is your license to practice law? Where is your proof of naturalization in my land? Who gave you the authority to be here? Right? Who issued you authority to act in any capacity, to file any complaint or any charges against anyone? That's the question. And I say to you, she can't answer those questions. Right? So then, if you walk into a courtroom and nobody else has the status to be there, automatically challenge the jurisdiction of the court. There's nothing else that you need to say. There's nothing else to be said. Stand mute. Let them proceed, because guess what? They cannot proceed. You have a question.
How do we make them honor that information that you just passed on to us?
In the courtroom, as I have learned, because I've spent a lot of time there, right? There is a language of silence. After you've said what you need to say, don't say any more. They will do the rest when you stand on your square. That's all you need to do. There's no need to stand there and argue with the judge, and trust me, I've done that. All right? And once you say what you need to say, they know everything else to do. But understand, they do not want you exposing the truth to their corporate wards, because every slave that you take out of their corporation, they lose money. This is making business. So don't go into the courtroom trying to expose the fraud. That's not your job. That's not why you're there. There's another venue for that. In that courtroom, because understand, it's not court, because it's not law. And I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. So don't try to challenge them on the law. They already know that. They already know they don't have the proper status. They already know they're operating in your land fraudulently. All right? Just say what you have to say and back off. They will give you the window. And it's up to you. If you are educated enough about the law, you'll see the window, you'll recognize it, and then you'll be able to walk through it and walk out the door. But if you're not conscious, when they open the window for you, I'll give you an example, as I gave in class just a few nights ago. Went into the courtroom, and the judge has papers there in front of me, and he's just arguing with me. Young lady, you'd better come back here. I'm going to send all these officers I have at my disposal with guns to hunt you down and bring you. And he's just running his mouth. And the prosecutor slides me the paper to sign, and it was blank. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So I signed the paper because I know how to sign contracts and not be obligated to them. Right? So I did that, signed the blank piece of paper. They took a copy, I took a copy, and I left. and I never heard from them again. But if I had stood there, as I shared with class, and I have done this paper is blank, and I'm not signing it, and right? So all I had to do was come into the courtroom and say what I had to say. Now, I know how to present myself in the courtroom, Islam, right? And see the window and walk out.
Thank you.
All right. Now, the next issue at law is jurisdiction. We already know they don't have the status. Now, do they have the jurisdiction? The answer is no. Because in order to have jurisdiction, you must first prove status. Everybody in the courtroom must have status on the record. Why is that so important? Because unless their status is on the record, what country do you represent? Says what law you're here to get justice on, right? Now, if you have not clarified the status for the record, you can't bring your law into the court. So there can be no court. So status is very important. And so if you're Moor, and let's say somebody else is Manchurian, and I'll get to that in a minute, when you have two people of different standings in the courtroom, you have to decide what law applies. Is there a treaty between the two? Do they have a constitution? Do they have any other trade agreement or contract that binds them and obligates the parties? That's the question. All right? So if you walk into the courtroom and they immediately start adjudicating, you have no idea what law they're using. And I guarantee you, because status has not been established for the record, they're not using any law that applies to you. And they're not using any law that applies to them. They're simply using corporate policy, which is discretionary. If they like you today, they'll let you off. If they don't like you tomorrow, they'll give you some time or a fine. Okay? So status and then jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is going to determine what area, what geographical area encompasses the authority that that judge or that court has. All right? So if you're in a municipal court or a court of common pleas, don't go in there talking about the Constitution, because they don't have jurisdiction to discuss the Constitution with you. Do not go into a state court discussing the Constitution unless it's the state's Constitution, because the United States' Constitution they have no jurisdiction over, but they won't tell you that. They'll dismiss the case. Different jurisdictions. And don't go into federal court talking about city ordinances. You understand the difference? Okay. Jurisdiction. Then adjudication. Once you get to the part about adjudication, you have to ask the question, do you understand the law that applies to you, that applies to this matter? Because there's two types of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction over the matter and jurisdiction over the person. All right? Does the court have both? They must have both in order to proceed. They don't tell you these things, but this is very important. So if the court has gotten to the point of adjudication, all right, which for me, I don't have that problem. But once the court gets to the point of adjudication, then they're ready to start prosecuting. They're ready to find you guilty of something, some kind of way. And the reason for that is because it's a business. And once you enter there and they seize jurisdiction over you, they adjudicate for the sole purpose of getting some money. That's the bottom line. They don't care about you, whether you're innocent or whether you're guilty, none of that. How much money are they going to get out of this? And their little club that they have called the Bar Association, their members have to be fed. So they want to make sure that this one gets fed and that one gets fed. And that's fine, because that's their corporate thing. That's the way they make money. And if they're going to make money being deceitful and all that, that's the karmic baggage they've got to carry. But you don't want to be a participant to it. That's all. Color of law. Color means something that pretends to be something that it's not. Colorable court, colorable money, colorable law, colorable people. Any people who call themselves colored, Negro, African American, Indian, Puerto Rican, Chinese, Australian, all of these are colorable labels, but these people for the most part around the world don't even know this. But because they call themselves Chinese, as I was getting ready to say to you, they are part of a corporate nation state as well, because the country of China is Manchuria. The nation state, the corporate ward nation state is China. That is not the country or the sovereignty of the people. The people are Manchurian. All right? You understand? Say anybody who wants to call themselves Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico is a corporate nation state. It is a private, non-profit corporation that has a charter issued by the Moors where they have the authority to conduct commerce and trade on the island of Borinquen. Borinquen, right? Borinquen. That's the name of the people. Borinquen is the name of the island. Puerto Rico is the private non-profit corporation that has the charter to operate within the geographical boundaries of Borinquen. Most Puerto Ricans don't even know that. I go around telling people all the time, you're not this, you're not that. This is who you really are, because people have grown up into slavery for generation after generation in all these corporate nation states who belong to the United Nations, which is a private non-profit corporation trade association for nation state corporations. Got it? In order to belong to the United Nations, you have to be a corporate ward state, nation state. Otherwise, they don't want you. And they will go to war against a country and take the people out of their sovereign capacity and say they're setting up democracy all around the world so that they can take people out of their sovereign capacity and take them away from the law and impose corporate statute on them. And that's exactly what they do. All right? Now, color of law is in full swing all around the world. All around the world. And they have a clique where they're all intermingled and they all agree to participate together in this game. Right? Now, it doesn't matter where you go. Just like most people think you need a passport to travel from company to company to company that are called nation states. So you do need a passport if you call yourself black or African American or a U.S. citizen or any of those things. Yes, you need a passport to travel from one corporate nation state to another. But when you're traveling from one country to another, you do not need a passport. And those countries will tell you you don't. Depends on what you call yourself. You understand? Okay. Why do we have colorable law and colorable courts? During the Civil War, the Moors went to war against each other. Now, we destroyed ourselves in this. The Europeans did not come here and bring us down. We did that from inside, and they capitalized on the carnage. Do you understand? All of these buildings all around here, as I told in class last night, they're ours. They belong to us. They're ancient, these buildings. There's a whole city underneath this city. They went and burned all the major cities, the major energy centers on this globe we called an earth. Our ancestors set up these energy centers that we call Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Atlanta, Detroit, right? Chicago, Miami, Phoenix, Los Angeles. They are energy centers. They're not where they are in huge, large cities just because of some coincidence. There's energy and power in these places. London, Rio de Janeiro, all right? And by the way, we're going to spell it like this, Rio de, which is a normal title of the Moors, Rio de Janeiro. You understand? This thing is worldwide. This flag that we carry with the red flag, with the five-pointed green star, with the pointing up, all right, is a worldwide flag. It's recognized all around the world, all right? So, the reason we have colorable courts and colorable law is because during the Civil War, when the Moors warred against each other, there were those who agreed to participate in the game called the corporate ward game. And there were many who made a lot of money. They got a commission on everybody they got to sign a birth certificate, because the birth certificate is a contract that puts you in slavery. And they got money. William Penn got very rich, all right? All the Quakers got very rich. All the abolitionists got very rich on this Civil War ward state game. Robert Morris and a lot of these buildings that are named after these people in downtown Philadelphia became multimillionaires, and their ancestors are still wealthy today over the corporate ward game. All right? Now, the reason that we have to have colorable law and colorable courts is because so many of us agree to be slaves. We don't need colorable courts and colorable law otherwise. But the people who agree to be bound by the 14th Amendment, which covers civil rights, which covers Negroes and African Americans and Jews and Hispanics and Indians and all these people like that, If you agree to call yourself that, they have to create a statute that applies to you, because law doesn't apply to you. So it's not their fault. It's the fault of the people who agree to be outside of their sovereign capacity. Okay? And now, if you walk in and you want to reestablish it, they're at odds because they're not accustomed to people walking in who are conscious and sovereign. Hey, you can't separate the two when you walk into a courtroom. And when I say you walk in on your square, I don't mean standing with your feet at a right angle. All right? I mean not to be deterred when you know you're in the right and you have law on your side. Do not back down. But you do not have to be belligerent. Trust me, I've been there. Don't do that. Okay? Now, the law of the land. The law of the land, as it applies to the United States of America and the United States, is their Constitution. The law of the land, which supersedes that, which if you go and read the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, you will see that the treaty, in particular the Treaty of 1787, which was last signed and ratified in 1986. All right, it's re-signed every 50 years. That it's the treaty that is the actual law of the land. Now, that being the case, how do we make that treaty work for us? We always say they're not honoring the treaty. This is the oldest treaty in the world. Did y'all know that? And it's the only unbroken and longest standing treaty in the world. Did y'all know that? Now, that treaty protects us. You need to go get a copy of it, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787, all right, signed by the Emperor of Morocco. Actually, he signed it in the month of Ramadan in the year 1201, all right, which translates into the Gregorian calendar year of 1787 because they added 586 years to our calendar. All right? So, in terms of using the law of the land, and when you express these things to them, you don't even have to go into a lot of detail about it, because those who rule and those in government and those who sit on those judicial benches know what this doctrine is. And they adhere to it, but the problem is there's not enough of us standing up defending it. Okay? How to correct the issue? The people must be in their proper person. The people must act in their sovereign capacity. As the brother said earlier, how do you behave as a sovereign? How do you behave as a sovereign? You behave as a sovereign by not getting so upset and ranting and raving and causing a scene. There's no need to do any of that. As I said in the courtroom, as in with law enforcement and any of that, there's a language of silence. Just like the mummers who march down Broad Street every New Year's and they're playing it up and playing it up. What does mummery mean? Silent mockery. Who are they mocking? Us. All right? But they understand the language of silence, and they deal in it all the time with their secret signs and symbols. But don't be angry with them for using these things. Why not? We taught it to them. Okay? Don't be angry with them because they have gotten out of control with the power that we gave them. We created these people. We can't now turn around and say, now we don't want you, now, go off someplace else and this and that. And if you know the history, you know that what the Moors did to these people when they were first created. The Moors considered them subhuman. They couldn't speak Latin, which is our original language. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't own land. They couldn't vote. They were totally disenfranchised. And this is why the Moors commissioned Benjamin Bey, who you know as Benjamin Banneker, who is also Benjamin Franklin, by the way, okay, to teach these people the science of government. He did that for a select few. Unfortunately, it couldn't go and spread as widely as it should have been. Now we have a situation on our hands where we as Moors refuse to be who we are. In the civil rights movement, there were those who led it who were paid to get us off our square, and we agreed to be there. We agreed to be called black, and we're proud of it, remember? Now, who could tell us any different? Now, the Europeans have a dilemma because they've lied to us so much and we have forgotten so much that if they stand up to tell us the truth, would we believe them? The majority of the people who call themselves African American, right now, if you tell them they're not from Africa, they'll give you hell. Am I right? Yes, we are. Now, can you imagine you're getting that feedback from them. Can you imagine what they would say to a European who now try to tell them they're not from Africa? You understand? Now you've got Bill Gates, who's given $1 billion to the United Negro College Fund, you know, to keep more Negroes out of their sovereign capacity, and they jump right into the boat, right? Play it up to the hilt. Oh, what a great thing he's done. You know, they love him to death. Now, if the Moors try to stand up and say who the man really is, you got all these black people who are going to criticize you. Leave the man alone, they'll say. All right? But we know the truth. So we correct the issue only by standing on our square, whether we're Moors or whether we're not. All right? Now, let's talk about what law really is. Law is based upon the science of astrology, astrologic. Don't let anybody ever tell you that astrology is for entertainment purposes. It is the science that rules. It is the science that governs. As I said to you, what all law is, all law. All law. Do we praise all law? Absolutely. Do we praise Christ? Absolutely, because what, not who, what is Christ? Christ is the great I am. And if you know what Islam means, let me tell you this. I, self, law, am master. I am the master of my own fate. I am all law. All right? When you walk into the courtroom and you know these things, trust me, you get a different result. When they ask you your name, you never say, my name is. That's a label. What do you say? I am. I am. You never swear on the Bible. You affirm. You affirm on the Bible. And as Sister Thanai here said to me, oh, they try to trick you. They'll say, do you swear or affirm? No. You just say, I affirm. Because what? I am. And who you are. And that's your status. And nobody can compete with that. Nobody can take that from you. And no matter what paperwork you submit to a court, what is the most important thing is when you walk into a courtroom and you speak the law. And when you speak the law in a courtroom, guess what? You speak it into existence. Because a thought is an activity. It's real. It may not be something you can touch. But as soon as that thought transpires into a word, it becomes a spell. That's why they call it spelling. You get it? Now, law is based upon the zodiac. Now, when you walk into a courtroom, there's all kinds of things going on. There's sacred geometry going on in the courtroom. In fact, the courtroom is set up according to sacred geometry. All right? And here's what happens when you're in there. The judge is at the top of the triangle. Got it? When you walk in there, and as I had shared in another class, to deal with marriage, it's the same thing. And I'm going to talk about that also in a minute. You walk in there, and when you appear, never tell the court that you are appearing. Look in the law dictionary and find out the definition of appear. Never do that. You go into the courtroom and you make a what? A special appearance. Not general. That will get you in trouble every time if you appear in a courtroom. And all of these little nuances, they know these things. And they are put there to trap you who don't know. So when you walk in there and you're on your square, being on your square means to know these things and not to walk in the courtroom uncomfortable. Because when you know them, you have no reason not to come to court, do you? You want to be there because you want to make a special appearance to challenge the jurisdiction of the court. Why? Because of the lack of status. And once jurisdiction is challenged, it must be proven for the record. It must be proven for the record before the court can proceed. Do you understand? The judge must come with his nationality papers. He must come with the flag of the country, not the nation state that he represents. That United States flag with the 50 stars, which now should be 48 because there are only 48 states. Did y'all know that? 2 of them dropped out, Hawaii and Alaska are no longer states. Did y'all know that? They're no longer states. The treaty was up, they got out. I'm kind of going through a lot of things right now, and okay. All right. The law is used by people in their proper person. When you walk into the courtroom, you should always have your paperwork precede you. Don't walk in there without first having submitted some document to the court to let them know that, yes, I'm coming. And look in the law dictionary and look up the definition of come. It's different than appear. Now, you can come to the courtroom, all right, and make a special appearance. You understand? Never, you get the subpoena, whatever it is in the newspaper, and don't believe all this other stuff where they tell you, don't go to court if you get these papers, because they will put a manhunt out for you, and you do not need that. And there's no reason for you not to go. You should go. You should go, and the more of us that do go and challenge the jurisdiction and let them see we're not scared because we're standing on the square, they will stop calling you to court, all right? Because the people who operate in their proper person, and the more and more of us that go in there operating in our proper person, they're going to begin to see the game is up. The secret's out. We can't do this anymore, all right?